So now the second part of this lecture we talk about the difference between the real retention and observed retention. First of all, it is observed retention is directly measurable, experimentally measurable. This is not directly measurable. Second one is that it can be used for modeling purposes, cannot be used for modeling purposes simply because actually between the two things, this is C naught bulk concentration, there is a concentration gradient exists, that is Cm, and you will be having a permeate concentration in the permeate side is Cp. So, between C naught and Cp there exists the concentration boundary layer or mass transfer boundary layer which the observed retention it does not include. So, because of this fact it is known as the observed retention, this is known as the real retention. So, observed retention, the definition 1 minus C naught by Cp, the permeate concentration will be entirely depending on the operating conditions, right. What are the operating conditions in typical membrane based processes? First is the feed concentration. If you fix your effluent, feed concentration is fixed. So, forget about feed concentration if you fix your effluent, because the concentration is fixed. And what are the other operating conditions? The other two operating conditions are, one is the pressure difference delta P across the membrane, third one is the extent of turbulence, that means Reynolds number that you are going to have in the system. Okay. You can have a start cell, in the start cell because depending on the starter speed you can have the turbulence, or if you have a cross flow cell, we will discuss all these geometries later on. If you have a cross flow cell, the linear velocity will define the Reynolds number. Okay. So, depending on the operating conditions the permeate concentration will change. So, therefore, permeate concentration includes the variation of operating conditions. So, that cannot give the exact the separation, extent of separation by the membrane, that is that has the affinity for that particular solute. So, real retention is the definition is gives the actual separation capability of a particular membrane towards a solute, that is why it is called a real retention. So, RR quantifies exact separation capacity of a solute of a membrane towards a solute. Okay. So, it's basically nothing but, and it is constant for a particular membrane solute solvent system. Okay. So, that is the beauty of real retention. So, it is constant for a particular membrane solute solvent system. For example, if we have an aqueous solution of polyethylene glycol, let us say 600, and if we have a membrane, let us say some kind of membrane, okay, the real retention can be 0.8, but using the same membrane, if you use a different solute, for example, let us say dextran, the real retention can be something else, 0.1 or let us say 0.5. and this value of real retention is fixed for a particular membrane solute system, and mostly we are talking about the aqueous solution. The solvent is more or less water. Okay. So, for different solutes and membranes combination, the real value of the real retention becomes constant. So, it becomes an intrinsic property of the membrane towards a particular solute. Okay. So, real retention is constant, and if you look into the definition of real retention, it gives a, so it is basically a fundamental property of the polymer film towards the solute, and it gives a partition coefficient. It is just like a partition coefficient of the membrane between the two phases, right, of the solute between the two phases, in the upstream side and in the downstream side. It gives a relationship or a partitioning value of the solute in the upstream side of the membrane and in the downstream side of the membrane. So, this is a very gross assumption. Okay. One can, so this real retention, so it is basically a very gross assumption, and very simplistic version of the pore flow modeling. If you would like to have a detailed modeling or detailed understanding of transport of the solutes through the membrane pores, one has to go for the pore, something called pore flow modeling, which is beyond the scope of this particular course, so we may not be discussing it. But the easiest way to define the value of the solute upstream and downstream of the membrane by defining a partition coefficient, and that partition coefficient is constant for a particular membrane solute system, and the simplest definition is real retention. Okay. So, real retention has great implication as far as the modeling of the systems are concerned or design of the system is concerned, and RR is always greater than observed retention R naught, because Cm is greater than C naught. Okay. Now, next definition that we come across is molecular weight cutoff. Now, molecular weight cutoff is basically a gross interpretation or gross meaning of pore size of the membrane. Now, it is very difficult to find out the pore size of the membrane. There are various methods, for example, scanning electron micrography and various other methods are available for for carrying out the pore size distribution of the membranes. Now, membranes cannot be having a single pore, there will be a distribution of the pores, and the average pore size is reported. You require a sophisticated instrument and costly instrument, which will be in the whose cost will be in the order of 40 to 50 lakhs for measurement of the pore size distribution of a particular polymeric membrane. Now, the easiest way to find out the suppose you are going to develop some membrane in a laboratory and try to characterize what cutoff of the membrane is. Okay, what will be rough pore size of the membrane is. The way to define is molecular weight cutoff. A membrane is having 1000 molecular weight cutoff, means it will retain solutes which will be having molecular weight above 1000. Okay. Above 1000, and it can permeate, and it will permeate solutes with molecular weight less than 1000. So, that means it is a 1000 molecular weight cutoff. Now, how to find out the molecular weight cutoff curve, or how to determine the molecular cutoff of a particular membrane, that is very important and it is quite crucial as far as the membrane researchers are concerned. So, what one has to do, one has to prepare a solution of various molecular weights, solution of solutes having different molecular weights. For example, I will prepare, suppose I have prepared a membrane, I will prepare solution of, let us say 10% solution or 1% solution of various solutes having molecular weight. Let us say first molecular weight I will be taking 58.5, that is sodium chloride, right. Next, let us say glucose. Glucose is having molecular weight around 180. Sucrose, which will be having a molecular weight of 342. PEG of various molecular weights are available, 200, 400, 600, 1000, 1500, okay, 2000, like that. PEG 4000, 6,000, 10,000, 30,000, various molecular weights of polyethylene glycol fractions are available. Similarly, you can have dextran fraction. Dextran is again a polysaccharide, dextran. Okay. It has different molecular weights, let us say 10,000, 40,000, 40K, 70K, 1.5 lakhs. Okay. So, what we will do, and generally these molecular weight cutoff curves are generated by using neutral solute. That is quite important. Sodium chloride is not a neutral solute, it is a simplest possible electrolyte you can think of. Okay. But other molecules like glucose, sucrose, various molecular weight of polyethylene glycol, dextran, all are neutral solutes, they are not charged. Why they are using neutral solutes, and why not charged solutes for doing the molecular weight cutoff characteristic curves? Simply because some of the membranes, when you are talking about the polymeric membranes, some of the membranes are membranes matrix are becomes charged. So, the pores are becomes charged. So, in the very small distance, the charge interactions and electric properties of this between solutes and the membrane matrix become very important. Okay, Debye length and things like that we will talk about later on. All these things becomes very important, charge interactions becomes very important when we talk about a very small distances. Okay. So, therefore, those can have an effect on the separation characteristic. So, that is why the charged molecules are generally avoided in creating or characterizing the molecular weight cutoff curves. What we do? We generally use the neutral solutes like glucose, sucrose, polyethylene glycol, dextran, various fractions of dextran, so on and so forth. Now, we prepare solution of this very small let us say 1% solution of all these molecular weight of materials. Okay. So, you have, let us say you have 7 or 8 or 10 of these polymers. So, you prepare 1% solution for all of them, each of them. So, let us say 10 solutions. Then using a test cell, a typical test cell looks like this. It's a body, it's a cylindrical shell, and it has a body, and in the bottom there is a disc is there, and you can put a disc membrane. The lower portion of this flange is curved. It is basically corrugated, so that if the permeate that is coming out, it can go through it. Okay. Then it is pressurized by nitrogen cylinder. And you put a stirrer. Okay. Why you put a stirrer? Simply because to avoid the deposition over the membrane surface. Okay. To minimize it, you cannot avoid it completely, to minimize it. Now, using various molecular weight, you measure the you carry out this experiment. This is called starch cell experiment. You carry out this experiment with solutions of different molecular weights and measure the permeate concentration. The filter that is coming, measure the permeate concentration. Once you measure the permeate concentration, you know the feed concentration. Okay. So, you can find out the observed retention 1 minus Cp by C naught. Now, in this case, you have to have very high stirring speed to avoid the polarization over the membrane surface, so that you can assume that over this cell, over the volume of the feed, the concentration is more or less uniform. Okay. Now, you plot the observed retention versus molecular weight in a semi-log scale. This is in logarithmic scale, this is in normal scale. So, it is a semi-log scale. Now, if you plot the observed retention versus molecular weight of the solution of that membrane, you are going to get a curve something like this. Okay. This is 1 means 100% retention. Okay. There is no solute that are coming in the permeate. And in this S-shaped curve, the value corresponding to 90% separation is supposed to be a molecular weight cutoff of the membrane. Okay. Suppose this molecular weight turns out to be let us say 30,000, then we call the membrane as 30,000 molecular cutoff membrane. Because you have to fix some value 0.9, 0.95, or 0.98, something like that. It is a general norm, it is a heuristic, or it is a thumb rule that when the value of the corresponding to the molecular weight, the molecular value of the molecular weight corresponding to the observed retention of 0.9 will be termed as the molecular weight cutoff. Okay. Now, these molecular weight cutoff curves can be of two types. Okay. It can be a diffused cutoff membrane, that means this is spread out, okay, and it is known as diffused cutoff membrane, and this is called a sharp cutoff membrane. That means, if I talk about a membrane of a molecular weight 10,000 cutoff, that 10,000 may not be very sharp. That means, it can retain molecular weights 10,000 or 9,000 even. So, that is called a diffused cutoff membrane, and this cutoff is a stiff or it is a sharp cutoff membrane. Now, whether you will be getting the sharp cutoff membrane or whether you will be getting the diffused cutoff membrane, that will be entirely depending on the pore size distribution of the membrane. Now, one has to control the pore size distribution. How to control the pore size distribution? You can tinker the casting conditions of the membrane and can vary the pore size of the membrane, and you can optimize the whole system, can make it a standardized rule. What are the various conditions of the casting solution? Casting composition, solution composition, type of solvent you are using, whether you are using a DMF or whether you are using a acetone, that depends, concentration of that, time of evaporation and time of exposure to the ice water bath, temperature of aniline, duration of aniline. All these are various conditions of various casting conditions. By tinkering or by changing these casting conditions, one can have various molecular weight pore size distribution, and one can land up with various molecular weight cutoff of the membrane. Okay. Okay. Now, there are for any modeling purpose, or forget about modeling, for if you look into the performance of a membrane, there are two things one has to look into. These two things are, one is productivity, another is the quality. Productivity means how much filtrate rate you are going to get. Let us say volumetric filtrate rate, meter cube per meter square second or liter per meter square hour. Okay. And quality is the permeate concentration. These two are the performance indicating parameters of any membrane based separation process. Now, in order to get these values, there are two definitions which are indicative. Which are these two definitions? One is the permeability. Permeability of the membrane, another is the observed retention or real retention. Observed retention is a vague thing, so real retention is the actual one. Permeability indicates how porous your membrane is. That means, if we talk about a membrane of higher permeability, you are going to get high productivity. Okay. And real retention of the membrane means, if the real retention is very high, the membrane is very selective to the particular fluid, that means retention will be very high. Okay. That means, for value of real retention 1, that means your Cp is equal to 0. That means, you are not going to get any solute in the permeate stream, the membrane retains everything. For the value of for such case, when it is pure water in the downstream, in the permeate stream, value of both real retention and observed retention are equal to 1. Now, therefore, real retention is directly related to the quality of the membrane's performance. So, these two parameters, productivity and quality, are directly related to the two properties of the intrinsic property of the membranes. One is the permeability, another is the real tension. So, therefore, whenever you are trying to design a membrane based processes or trying to predict the system performance, one has to look into independently determine these two properties. One is the membrane permeability, another is the real tension. The notation that is used for the real tension is RR, another is the membrane, and for membrane permeability it is known as LP. Okay. Now, there are independent methods by which one can determine the value of membrane permeability and determine the value of real retention separately. Now, we are going to discuss these methods. Membrane permeability is basically any flux is proportional to the driving force, that is called that is a physical law. Okay. So, we call permeate flux, that is the productivity of the process. Permeate flux is meter cube per meter square second or liter per meter square hour, is proportional to the driving force. Driving force is delta P in this case, and the proportionality constant is permeability. Okay. Now, if you are talking about pure solution, pure water, pure solvent, okay, there is nothing called pure solution. If it is a pure solvent, then there is no osmotic pressure present in it. If there is a solution, then the osmotic pressure will be there, and you have to overcome that osmotic pressure. So, the effective operating transmembrane pressure drop will be delta P minus delta pi. So, there will be minus delta pi here if you are talking about the presence of any solution. For pure solvent, pi is equal to 0, there is no question of delta pi. So, VW is equal to LP times delta pi. Okay. This is known as a phenomenological equation. Phenomenological equation means any phenomena can in this universe can be explained that the flux is proportional to a driving force. Okay, that is a phenomena. Now it is very simple how to, once you know this definition, it is very simple to find out the membrane permeability. What to do? Basically, use the same start cell and use water instead of, use pure solvent instead of the solution, and conduct the experiment under different operating pressure, okay, and measure the permeate flux and plot the permeate flux versus delta P. You take pure water or pure solvent, carry out the experiment under various operating pressures, and for a particular pressure you measure the permeate flux, and similarly you can generate a data of permeate flux at various operating pressures, then plot these values. Let us say there will be something like this, and then draw a straight line among them. It must be going through the origin. Okay, this must be going through the origin. Then slope of this curve will give you the membrane permeability. Okay. So, one has to conduct experiments using pure solvents at various operating transmembrane pressures, measure the permeate flux, plot the permeate flux versus delta P. It has to be a straight line through origin. The slope of that straight line will give the membrane permeability, and you need not to give a stirrer speed, you need not to give anything, because there is no polarization here, because there is no solute present there. Okay. It is very simple experiment, one can get the permeability, and most of the cases if you conduct these experiments, you will be inherently getting a straight line, there is absolutely no problem. Now, the second definition, the second quantity, the real retention, experimental determination of real retention is a bit complicated. Okay. In this case, what you do is that the polarization, let us define the polarization. and this polarization is basically in this case concentration polarization. I will talk about it in more detail later on. Now, as I said earlier that since there is a in this process the concentration of the solutes over the membrane surface is higher compared to the concentration of the solute in the feed. So, there exists a concentration gradient. This phenomena is known as the concentration polarization. The accumulation of solutes over the membrane surface is known as the concentration polarization. Now, there is no way to determine the membrane surface concentration, right, directly. There is direct experimental measurement. Okay, it is an active field of research. People are trying to find out the membrane surface concentration. Now, what is generally done? We carry out the experiments at low polarization conditions. There are two things, one is high polarization condition and low polarization condition. Let us define high polarization and low polarization. This high polarization and low polarization are directly related to the value of membrane surface concentration. If the membrane surface concentration is high, we call that condition as a high polarization condition. High polarization condition will be obtained when you are talking about high concentration of the solute in the feed, high value of delta P and low value of turbulence, low Reynolds number. If you have high value of concentration in the feed, under pressure gradient more solutes will be transported to the membrane surface. So, increasing the membrane surface concentration. If you are talking about high delta P, because the rate of convection will be more and more solutes will be again coming to the membrane surface, causing its increasing the surface concentration. If we talk about the low Reynolds number, that means the surface concentration will be, it will not be taken away. Low Reynolds number means the scarring of this thing will be less, solutes will be less. So, the membrane surface concentration will be pretty high. So, low polarization condition means we are talking about low concentration, low pressure, reverse of this, and high turbulence. So, therefore, if we carry out an experiment in a small stirred cell under low low feed concentration and lower delta P or transmembrane pressure drop and at very high stirring speed, what it does? It mixes up everything what is deposited over the membrane surface. So, throughout the whole feed chamber the concentration remains more or less constant, right. In this case, in such case you conduct the experiment, you carry out the experiment at low polarization conditions and measure the permeate concentration. What that permeate concentration will give? That will give you observed retention, right, 1 minus Cp by C naught. But in this case C naught is roughly is equal to Cm, because membrane surface concentration and bulk concentration are more or less same. So, therefore, the R naught value, the observed retention value that you are getting under this condition will be almost equal to real retention value. So, therefore, real retention of a membrane and a solute can be obtained if you conduct experiments under low polarization conditions, and in that case the observed retention will be equal to real retention. Now, when you and since real retention is a constant property of the membrane and solute, it can be freely used once determined for the various other operating conditions. Okay. Okay. Now, this makes the full background of the first generation model for design. Let us call it first generation model or the simplest model for design. Okay. So, this model is nothing but a one dimensional model. And what we assume here, the assumption is basically the solutes will produce a constant film over the membrane surface. solutes depositing over the membrane surface will produce a film of constant thickness. Okay. So, there will be a concentration gradient present from C bulk to membrane surface concentration, then they are coming out to be permeate site. Now, what is wrong with this? This is the first generation model. What is wrong with this? The error involved here is that mass transfer boundary. So, this is basically thickness of concentration boundary layer. Concentration boundary layer or mass transfer boundary layer. The assumption is that we are assuming a constant thickness of this boundary layer. Actually, this boundary layer, the mass transfer boundary layer or concentration boundary layer, if you plot as a function of x the channel length, it will be something like this. Okay. And we are talking about the latter half portion where the thickness is constant. Okay. So, in this assumption, this is known as the film. Since this we consider in this case constant thickness of the film, we this theory is known as the film theory. Okay. Film theory is the first and the simplest model for attempted towards the design of any membrane based separation processes. Now, I will just try to give an idea what is the shortcoming of this first generation model. The mass transfer boundary layer, the developing region is called entrance length, right? Entrance length for the mass transfer boundary layer, and this is a fully developed mass transfer boundary layer. So, we are assuming, so therefore, in this case where the developing mass transfer boundary layer, the thickness of mass transfer boundary layer will be small and it is gradually increasing. Since the thickness is small, it will be offering low resistance against the solvent flux. So, initial of the channel you will be getting high permeate flux or high productivity. Later on it will be decreasing gradually once the mass transfer boundary layer grows, and when it becomes fully developed, it becomes constant. That is how whenever you are using the film theory, you are not counting the initial portion of the permeate flux. So, therefore, use of film theory will be always giving you under prediction of the permeate flux, because you are overlooking the developing mass transfer boundary layer, and that region will be substantial. If you remember the transport phenomena class that I have taken for you in probably in the last year, that if you talk about the hydrodynamic boundary layer, that means velocity boundary layer, the entrance length is given as LE by D will be equal to 0.05 Reynolds number, right. And since in this case we are talking about very thin channel, and maximum Reynolds number under laminar flow condition will be around 2000 or 2200, the LE will be turns out to be 4 to 6 centimeter. So, therefore, for the channels in the membrane separation units we are talking about with that thickness, the equivalent diameter, the entrance length for the hydrodynamic boundary layer becomes 4 to 6 centimeter only, whereas the full channel length will be in meters, maybe 100 centimeter, 200 centimeter. So, whether you will be having an entrance length of 4 to 6 centimeter in a channel of length 100 centimeter, it does not matter. On the other hand, if you look into the entrance length for mass transfer boundary layer, what is the entrance length? It will be 0.05 Reynolds time Schmidt number, and what is Schmidt number? Mu by rho d. Now, this becomes very interesting. Now, we are talking about solutes which will be having a higher molecular weight. Okay, for separation in these cases, higher molecular weight means they will be having lower diffusivity, and their diffusivity will be in the order of 10 to the power minus 11 meter square per second. That is the typical, the maximum diffusivity we can think of any solute in the present world is of monovalent salt, that is sodium chloride 10 to the power minus 9 meter square per second, that is the maximum diffusivity. If you increase the molecular weight, diffusivity decreases. For the proteins, we can have a diffusivity in the order of 10 to the power minus 11 meter square per second. So therefore, the speed, and let us say if you consider the viscosity will be in the order of, let us say, water viscosity 10 to the minus 3 Pascal second, and density is roughly the water density. So mu by rho becomes the kinematic viscosity, it becomes 10 to the power minus 6. So it becomes 10 to the minus 6 into 10 to the minus 11. So it becomes 10 to the 5. So it will be, Schmidt number will be order of 5. If Schmidt number will be in the order of 10 to the power 5, this becomes the entrance length becomes substantial in this case. The entrance length can be as high as 80 centimeter or higher. So if you talk about a channel of 100 centimeter, 150 centimeter, let us say, or 2 meter, and half of it 50% is the entrance length, then it is substantial. Now, if you do not calculate or incorporate the permeate flux in the entrance length that is coming out, which will be the maximum, then obviously you are going to under predict the permeate flux. So that is the first and foremost important drawback of film theory, because in the film theory we are considering the portion of the channel length where the mass transfer boundary layer will be constant, that means fully developed region, which will be only occurs at the later half of the channel. Now, film theory can be incorrect in the case of ultrafiltration, where we are talking about separation of protein, but it will be quite close to the correct value when we are talking about separation of the salt, which will be having very high diffusivity in the order of 10 to the power minus 9. So film theory will be giving more or less correct estimation of productivity in case of reverse osmosis and nanofiltration. Or in case of ultrafiltration and microfiltration, where we are talking about separation of the solutes of proteins of the solutes which will be having a molecular weight quite high and low diffusivity in the order of 10 to the power minus 10 or 10 to the power minus 11, then film theory will be giving you inaccurate prediction or under prediction. So let us define the utility regime of using of film theory. Suitable for RONF, under predicts for UF or MF, okay, ultrafiltration and microfiltration. Now, okay, having keeping these limitations of the film theory, let us look into the film theory. Okay. At the we are talking about the steady state only, because most of the operations are done in steady state. There are three fluxes towards the membrane surface. One is the permeate flux, one is the convective flux J times C, J is the volumetric permeate flux. Volumetric permeate flux, and this is the mass transfer boundary layer with thickness delta. Delta is the thickness of mass transfer boundary layer or concentration boundary layer, and volumetric flow rate is J and the concentration is Cp. So volumetric flow rate times concentration will give you the flux of the solute flux towards the membrane. Now, J is the volumetric permeate flux, and we are assuming that thickness of mass transfer boundary layer will be extremely small. If you remember from the transport phenomena, delta is inversely proportional to Schmidt number, maybe Schmidt number is to the power 1/3. So therefore, for these cases we are talking about high Schmidt number, right, 10 to the power 5. So therefore, the thickness of mass transfer boundary layer will be extremely small. So we can safely assume that the velocity field that within the mass transfer boundary layer in the transverse direction, that means in the y direction, will be more or less same, but in opposite sign compared to the permeation velocity in the permeate site. Okay. So let us look into the identify the various fluxes at the steady state towards the membrane. One is convective flux of the solute towards the membrane because of the pressure gradient. Another is the diffusive flux away from the membrane, because the membrane surface concentration will be higher because of presence of concentration polarization and concentration gradient within the boundary layer. There will be backward diffusion from the membrane surface towards the bulk. So, this is a Fickian diffusion minus d dc dy, okay, and a convective flux in the permeate site. So, there will be 3 fluxes present, and we will just identify them. J times C convective solute flux, this will be having a unit kg per meter square second, solute or kilomole per meter square second, solute flux towards membrane. JCP convective solute flux away from membrane, and minus d dc dy, it is the diffusive solute flux away from membrane. Okay. Now, at the steady state, these 3 fluxes, summation of these 3 fluxes will be equal to 0. Js stands for the solute flux. Summation of these 3 fluxes will be equal to 0. That gives the governing equation of productivity in the system. What is that? Just add them up. Jc minus d dc dy minus jcp will be equal to 0. So, j times c minus cp plus d dc dy will be equal to 0. So, you can get the governing equation of concentration dc dy will be equal to minus j by d c minus cp. Separate the variables, dc by c minus cp will be minus j by d dy, okay, and integrate over the thickness of mass transfer boundary layer from 0 to delta. Let us say delta is the thickness of mass transfer boundary layer, and on 0 means on the membrane surface the concentration is Cm, and at the edge of boundary layer there is a delta C is equal to C naught. So, this gives you ln C naught minus Cp divided by Cm minus Cp is equal to minus j delta by d. So, you will be getting Cm minus Cp by C naught minus Cp ln of that is equal to j d by delta is nothing but the mass transfer film mass transfer coefficient. So, j is equal to k ln Cm minus Cp divided by C naught minus Cp. This is known as famous film theory equation. Okay. So, if you somehow can estimate membrane surface concentration, if you can know the permeate concentration either by experiment or theoretically, and you know the feed concentration, and if you know how to estimate the mass transfer coefficient, you can estimate the value of permeate flux. Okay. Now, before going into the detailed calculation, now how to solve this equation, how to estimate the membrane surface concentration, I would like to discuss something about the mass transfer coefficient, because the expression of mass transfer coefficient is quite relevant and quite important in carrying out this type of calculations. Okay. Mass transfer coefficients, for estimation of mass transfer coefficient, there are several Sherwood number relations are available. Calculated or estimated, not calculated, estimated from Sherwood number relations. Okay. And obviously, they will be depending on the geometry, they are a function of geometry of the flow channel, and Reynolds number, Schmidt number. Reynolds number is basically the turbulence, and Schmidt number is the property of the fluid. And for flow through a tube, the Sherwood number is given as K d by d. This K is the mass transfer coefficient, small d is the diameter of the tube, capital D is the diffusivity of the solute in the system. This becomes 1.62 Reynolds Schmidt d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 for laminar flow region. Laminar flow is less than 2100. Okay. And for flow through rectangular channel, the Sherwood relation is K d E by d is equal to 1.86 Reynolds Schmidt d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 for the laminar flow region. So, both are laminar, and they are known as the Leveque solution. Why they are known as a Leveque solution? Under laminar flow conditions, these relations are derived from the theory only, they are not correlations. Okay. So, they are and the solution is first presented by Leveque. So, it is known as the Leveque solution. So, they are not correlation, they are derived from the first principles, and they are theoretically derived. dE is the equivalent diameter, and I will give you the definition of D after giving the definition of Reynolds number and Schmidt number. Reynolds number is rho u0 dE by mu, and Schmidt number is mu by rho d. Okay. So, rho is basically the density, mu is viscosity of the solution, density of the solution, d is the solute diffusivity in the solution. So, these three are solute solvent property. L in the relation is the length of the channel, geometry. Length of the channel. What is equivalent diameter? Equivalent diameter, if you remember the definition of equivalent diameter, it is 4 times weighted area times weighted perimeter. For a tubular for a tube geometry, the diameter will be diameter of inner diameter of the tube. For other geometry like rectangular channel, etc., let us say W is the width, H is the small height, half height of the channel. Okay. So, we are talking about the equivalent diameter of a rectangular channel. Rectangular channel means there are 2 plates and flow is occurring between the 2 plates. Okay. This is the half channel height H, full channel height is 2H, and H is the half height of the channel, and W is the width of the channel. So, equivalent diameter is 4 times weighted area. What is the weighted area? W times 2H, the cross section area, W times 2H. And what is the weighted perimeter? Width on both sides and full height on both sides. So, 2 times W plus 2H. And these types of membrane channels are very thin channels. That means, H will be in the order of 0.1 millimeter. On the other hand, width will be in the order of 6 to 8 centimeter. Okay. So, therefore, h is in fact 2h will be much less than w. So, under this condition d becomes 4 times 2wh and this becomes 2w. 2h will be negligibly small compared to the w itself. So, 2w will be cancelled out, d will be roughly 4 times half height. So, if you know the half height of the channel, that is the geometric specification of the channel, you can find out what is the equivalent diameter. Okay. Once you know the equivalent diameter, you will be in a position to calculate the Reynolds number. You will be in a if you know the physical properties of the solute and solvent, you will be able to know the spit number. So, once you know the spit number, once you know the Reynolds number, once you know the geometry like half height, the equivalent diameter of the channel or the inner diameter of a tube, and if you know the length of the channel or length of the tube, you will be in a position to calculate the Sherwood number or mass transfer coefficient under laminar flow conditions. In fact, for the turbulent flow conditions and for the start cells, because the most of the cases the start cells are very important as the module. For the start cell, different mass transfer relations or Sherwood number relations are available. Using those relations, we will be able to find out the estimate the mass transfer coefficients, and we can utilize them in order to find out the in order to calculate the permeate flux and permeate concentration. In fact, we have just started it. It will take probably one more class to wind up the how the first generation model is utilized to predict the system performance. That we will see in the next class. Okay.